of the Odyssey podcast. Today we are joined by the one and only Steven, the founder of the DeFi Dojo and also known as the calculator guy. Thanks a lot for joining us today, Steven. How are you doing?
Doing well, I mentioned before I'm distraught by the death of Charlie Kirk from yesterday. Flying my own flag at half mast. It definitely hit me hard. But aside from that, DeFi space is doing pretty good.
Yeah, it's tough times we're living in right now, and I hope that everybody is like able to do well and kind of deal with it. Maybe to start, for the very few viewers who do not know you yet, can you dive a little deeper into your background and how you ended up in DeFi?
Yeah, sure. So I have a weird background. Was a teacher in Saudi Arabia for a little bit, teaching English or ESP, not being psychic, but English for special purposes to doctor students and engineering students. Then came to the U.S. Taught philosophy at an international school. COVID hit. They wanted me to get the vaccine. I said, no, I don't want to get the vaccine. And they said, well, you have to, or we're going to fire you. And I said, you can't fire me. I have a religious exemption and constitutionally that's protected. They said, it doesn't matter. So we're going to fire you. And they fired me. But at the same time, I found DeFi. And man, it was a massive godsend because the yields were incredibly good. I mean, I only had $6,000 in savings to my name. I was a teacher, not particularly wealthy. And I just chucked it into DeFi and was very successful with it. And then from that, I started doing YouTube videos on like how to farm. Ironically, I think some of the first videos I watched were from Taiki back when he was first starting too. So shout out to Taiki.
Yeah, he did. I mean, he did ways to bring people into DeFi back then. I still remember
That's
the good
right.
old like Polygon incentive campaign days where you like got paid for looping before it was called looping.
He was
Easier
doing
times, man.
stablecoin farming
Easier
before it
times.
was cool. I mean, shout out to him. Yeah, he was one of the, and now he's maybe gone full circle. He's recently been doing like how he's farming 500K of stables on Arbitrum, and he's got his little rake and eating the scream. Return to monkey. So anyways, I got really big into DeFi farming. Built a community around it. We have 64,000 people on YouTube who follow me. 114,000 people on X. And then out of that, built the DeFi Dojo Discord, which a lot of people don't know has like single digit billions of dollars of addressable capital in there. There's a lot of hedge funds, family offices, trade shops, and just like wealthy folk who are in there constantly conversing with like DeFi protocol teams or each other and just talking about yields or macro or whatever's on their mind or posting funny gifs about price action. So it's been an amazing ride. Have worked with, I don't know, over 30 different teams in DeFi as well on ambassadorships and analytics and just like risk analysis, working with teams like Pendle and EtherFi and Euler and Solve and Mantle Blockchain. And it's been a crazy ride for sure. Going from a philosophy teacher to working with, multi-billion-dollar protocols and like, running a portfolio that I never would have imagined being able to run as a teacher, living in like a tiny 600 square foot attic in a congested neighborhood in Connecticut to being able to own a home and, in a very hard time to own a home. It's been a massive blessing. So shout out to God, couldn't have done it without him. And so that's who I am. That's where I'm at. And now I'm building a protocol, but go ahead.
Yeah, your backstory is like one of the most fascinating in crypto, like the way you've been able to rise to the top of DeFi and farming. And I mean, we've known each other for 3 years, so I was able to follow that a little bit on the side. And I mean, also very active in the dojo, of course. So yeah, it's always like it's one of these stories that genuinely make you happy. Like you just want to see the homies win. Maybe can you dive a little deeper into how you were able to trade up your book to the size it is right now? Like, I mean, most people, when they think about stablecoin farming and DeFi farming, they think about, okay, it's like 10 to 20% APR or whatever. But I mean, given that you started with only 6K and you're now like orders of magnitude higher than that, what were the strategies that you were employing? Like, what were your big wins? And how did your strategies evolve over time?
I think like like most people who are able to change their status by virtue of like DeFi or crypto, it's like it's not their fault. Like they didn't really do it, right? So for me, I was started in crypto back in 2017, back when ETH came out, and just tried trading. I thought, I'm a clever guy, right? I'm smart enough. I know my IQ. I'm an idiot. I'm an autist. And so I thought I could trade, right? And I couldn't. I just didn't have like the emotional rigidity for it, or fortitude for it. And so at some point, kind of felt. I mean, I made enough money to buy a laptop in 2017, which is pretty good for a teacher, but it wasn't like insane. And then back in 2019 or COVID times, got back into crypto because things were popping off. I don't know if it was like SafeMoon or something really stupid that got me back in.
Well, yeah, I think that was like early 2021. I mean,
Yeah.
it's been
And
a
then
long time ago.
and
We
then
had that many meme seeds back then.
my friend was like, dude, you can like participate in blockchain technology and like security and get paid really well to do it with this thing called Strong Block. And I was like, man, that sounds awesome. And he's like, and you lock up your capital. So like you can't even touch it. You can't trade it. You can't make it, you can't lose. And I was like, that's exactly what I need. Because I need to not be able to touch my capital. I just needed to set and forget. That sounds amazing. And he's like, yeah, man, there's these nodes. And so anyways, I did really well with that. Like stupidly well. That was my big win. And in hindsight, I would never touch that. Like there's no way I would ever touch anything like Strong Block ever again. Like looking back at it, it was a clear Ponzi scheme. And there were so many of those. And like there was Ponzi season of last cycle. We had Ohm forks, which were a lot of, in my opinion, effectively Ponzi schemes. We had node forks, which were outright Ponzi schemes. And then we had like a million different farm forks, which were just as bad. They weren't Ponzi schemes, but effectively they just like lured you in with a high APR, but had a really large deposit fee that you were never gonna get back. So that was the thing that got me up to like, I don't know, 30K, 40K, or 50K of like investable capital. It was a really big win for me. It was almost like a year worth of income. And from there, I started like, I mean, to be perfectly clear, a lot of the revenue I've made has just been from doing YouTube, from doing content. But in terms of yields and wins, holding ETH has been which is kind of insane to say. Holding ETH has been one of my biggest wins. Then this cycle, a lot of the wins came from airdrops. I mean, probably, I don't know, 20-25% of my whole portfolio right now is from airdrops. Athena airdrop, EtherFi airdrop. I mean, the Eigen airdrop was pretty good. It wasn't massive. Not Resolve. I mean, Resolve was an okay airdrop, but Renzo airdrop. I mean, there were so many like airdrop season. We played pretty heavily, and that was a really big win. Probably made like really low six figures out of all of those airdrops combined, which was amazing. Some of them that I wasn't even expecting. We did really well on. And in terms of yield farming, really early on, I don't know if you call it this cycle anymore, but it felt like it was this cycle. When all of the LRTs were coming out, back when like restaking was first a thing, none of them had liquidity. None of them had liquidity pairs. And I knew you could permissionlessly launch these things as long as there was a receipt token. And so we launched a bunch of, I say we, it's because whenever I say we, I mean like me and the Dojo guys. We launched a bunch of these LP pairs at like the 1% fee tier, and we were the only liquidity. So like there was no way you couldn't exit these LRTs aside from our liquidity. And so people were using our liquidity. We were getting, I don't know, 80 to 200% APR on like EtherFi ETH and Renzo ETH and Puffer ETH for a month or 2 months. I mean, I made really good. I probably made 30% ROI on my entire ETH holdings, which is the majority of my portfolio during that time. So, there have been and then arbitrage plays too. We've done a lot of really good arbitrage plays where things were severely depegged. I can't say I did the Circle USDC depeg, but certainly Dojo people did. I did a few of the LRTs that were depegged and bought those and played the repegs there. Those are some of my biggest wins. I also did some LPing, got really lucky. So I did like ETH Pendle for a while, ETH Frax for a while, and just the fees were nuts relative to TVL. And then I just had a permanent gain because Pendle and whatever else I was in, like they went up relative to ETH, and I exited into ETH, and I threw all of that ETH into these LPs for LRT season. So it was really just a really beautiful transition of yields. And now I'm roughly at the point where I'm doing almost all delta neutral. I have some exposure. I have like, maybe 20% Bitcoin exposure, a little bit of hyperliquid exposure, but it's all profits now. So I'm excited about that. And then just a bunch of delta neutral exposure.
On the side of airdrop farming, are you usually trying to just sell your airdrops as soon as possible? So to optimize for yield in USD, or also like holding some?
I unfortunately was a sell it all because free money is probably going to go down, and a lot of times it did. So I sold all of my airdrops, with few exceptions. Like anything that was meaningful amounts of money to me, I just sold. I just said, I'm going to take that off the table, right? No one cried taking profits, except for Hyperliquid. If I would have held my Hyperliquid airdrop, my whole portfolio would, I don't know, be twice as large right now. It's sad. We had so many Hyperliquid points. Yeah. So that's like the big fumble. But if I would have held all the other airdrops, likewise, I would have, a huge chunk of capital I wouldn't have made.
Yeah. So like right now, how do you analyze strategies that you're considering? How are your research processes structured? And like, I mean, talking from personal experience, like also trying to write up the Dojo digests, like whenever I read through the messages in the DeFi Dojo and like whatever you see on crypto Twitter, it has just become extremely difficult to stay in touch with everything happening in the DeFi trenches. Stable coins alone, there are probably, I don't know, 20, 30, 40, maybe 50 stable coins out there. How do you stay on top of all of this? And like, what is your way to separate signal from noise?
That's hard. I will say I am blessed to be in a position that a lot of people aren't, where I can typically just get in a Telegram group with new teams and talk to them directly. I know it's like not feasible for everyone, but Discord is, right? You can typically go on Discord and talk to someone adjacent to the team pretty easily in a way that you probably couldn't do with a Fortune 500 company. I think you'll be surprised by how close you can get to the CEO, even as like a random 4-figure farmer, just through Discord. So I do a lot of that, and aside from that, a lot of it's just like being on the dojo, talking to people who are maybe more informed than me, or like more focused on certain ecosystems. A lot of teams also will come to me and just say, hey, we're launching this thing, we're doing this campaign, we're doing this incentive stuff. CT, I think, is not good for yields, but CT is good for announcements. And so being on crypto Twitter, like probably more than is healthy for the human mind, is one way to just like be exposed to new things. Because, I try to follow people who are looking for new opportunities. And then, DeFi Llama is pretty good for stablecoin yields. Vaults.fyi is phenomenal if you're looking for vaults. So I've been using Vaults.fyi a lot recently, actually, just like sorting by stablecoins and then checking out whatever has the highest 7-day APR, and then at least using that as a jumping off point for research. And then, content. This has been the thing that helps the most. So this is maybe a hack that is really hard. It's not like a hack because it doesn't make life easier, it makes life harder, but it works, is creating content all the time. So creating my stablecoin yields threads, doing them frequently, trying to make them the best, because inevitably, if I do a thread about the best stablecoin yields, I'm going to have 10 people commenting, you forgot this, you missed this, you didn't do this. Thank you. That's amazing. You are helping me with my, that's fantastic. So being wrong publicly is one of the best ways to learn. It's actually, it's incredible. So like if I do an ETH thread, I know people are going to jump in there and say like, you forgot this, this, and this. Awesome. I'll include it next time. If I do a Bitcoin thread, same thing. So yeah, what being wrong publicly, doing research for those, staying on top of it, it's kind of hard, but it's literally like, it's my full-time job. My full-time job is DeFi. So it's not like I have to do a 9 to 5 and then come back and then try to squeeze DeFi time in. Yes, I do have 4 kids, but I have them researching now. They're all on computers. They're my little slaves. That's not true. They're way too young for that. But
expanding the Sybil fam.
Yeah, exactly right. Have them run some wallets. And then, another like cheat has been working with teams like Morpho, Euler, and Pendle, because they're not siloed teams, right? So like if you're looking at Pendle, well, every single opportunity is a different team. Well, I have to learn about those teams and those protocols to figure out what the heck this Pendle opportunity is. So that's just been a massive challenge. I've worked with Pendle for like, I don't know, a year now, and they're just phenomenal. And so working with Pendle, I've had to learn about all these different PT assets and who's issuing them. Working with Morpho, and well, I don't work directly with Morpho, so I can't say that, but working with Euler, I do love Morpho though. Working with Euler, all of the different collaterals I came on, so like really early on in Euler's career, RLP was huge. I had to go learn what the heck is RLP, This junior tranche for Resolve protocol. How does it work? Why is the APR so high? And so just being forced to learn all the time is it can't be beat in terms of research motivation.
Just the classic Richard Feynman lesson that it's best to just try teaching stuff to other people to understand it yourself.
Yeah,
I think
so he
there's
was really
a
good at that too.
lot of wisdom in there. Like then 3 years ago, I was also teaching like as a teaching assistant and guest lecturer at my former university, a course on intro to blockchain, and like that really forced me to just like formally understand all of these DeFi mechanisms and like the basics of blockchain tech. And like I'm still like eating off of that knowledge today, because it's like you had to understand it on a different level, because you now were forced on the spot to answer any like out of the box questions about these topics that would be coming up. Maybe on the note of protocols you're using a lot, like what are your favorite things to do right now in DeFi in terms of opportunities, in terms of projects to follow that are either upcoming or already live? Like personally, I think that especially if you look at Ethena, Pendle, and Hyperliquid, these have just been huge winners this cycle. Especially yes. Pendle, like I've like just the ability to serve as this marketplace for transferring risk and time preferences. Like I think Pendle has been sitting at the absolute forefront of that, and like I mean, for DeFi stuff, it's always sort of hard to express your excitement for the product by buying the token, because there's not a lot of direct like causal relationship in terms of value accrual. But yeah,
sometimes
I think on the DeFi side, we've seen a lot of actual innovation over the last 2 years. So what are your favorite things right now?
What are my favorite things? Oh, that's a good question. I like Hyperliquid because number goes up, and that's excellent technology. If everyone just adopted that tech, I think we would be in a much better place. So go copy them. Shout out to Jeff. Oh, by the way, I think they officially announced the native decision, so they're going to be using native markets. That's big. Who knows if the whole campaign publicly was Fugazi? I don't think it was. I think it was actually organic. They just went with the best choice. Either way, it was great for my bags. So that's been awesome having them all fight publicly. But genuinely, like decentralized perpetual markets, there were so many that did it. So why did Hyperliquid win? Right? Was HLP really the 0-to-1 integration? Was it the fact that like Jeff and his buddies were a bunch of Citadel market makers? Was it the fact they did a like no VC massive community airdrop? Maybe. I mean, Hyperliquid wasn't really big until people started talking about the airdrop, and then after the airdrop, it became super massive. So there's something to be said there. But then, now they have their own chain. It's a very useful protocol. Why did it win where DYDX failed? Even though DYDX has kind of like a vault similar to HLP. I don't know. I mean, there are some things that there are people who are better with fundamentals than I am that could answer, but Hyperliquid did win. I love it. I think it's fantastic. Some of the funding rates on there are amazing. Funding rate arbitrage is really good with Hyperliquid. I do not trust centralized exchanges at all, so I'm glad that there is a hegemon in the space like Hyperliquid to fill that role that really needs to be filled. And so it's not insanely like novel tech, right? It's a perp dex. It's nothing is mind blowing about that. I think they may have cornered a bit of the market early on with pre-market assets, but now they don't really do that as much anymore, or like pre-TGE assets. And like Whales kind of failed at that, even though they had a really good UI and pretty good funding. But yeah, so like obviously Hyperliquid is really good. I like it a lot. Other things that I think are actually pretty novel, Meteora / Maverick / Trader Joe. They all have this tech that I really like. Meteora is doing the best at it, in my opinion, but the other two are also really good, which is like buckets and being able to be very expressive with the way in which you do liquidity. Like you don't have to just put concentrated liquidity at a specific fee tier and it's all the same everywhere. You can have like, concentrated liquidity on a curve, or a concentrated liquidity that expresses, a strangle or a straddle option. You can have concentrated liquidity that effectively works as like buy orders and limit orders. And DLMM, right? Dynamic fees on the concentrated liquidity is a game changer. So you may be on like a 1% fee, it's not 1%. You may be on like a 1 BIP fee tier, but then you have a day of crazy high volume and it dynamically goes from a 1 BIP to like 50 bips or even 1%. Whereas in Uniswap, 1 BIP is 1 BIP. I mean, I guess with Uniswap hooks, now they're kind of allowing you to do things like dynamic fee tiers, and hopefully that will catch on. But it's already caught on Solana. It's already caught on Maverick. Already caught on. Well, actually, I don't know if dynamic fee tiers exist on Maverick or on Dojo. So, anyways, I like Meteora. I know they got a lot of spicy opinions about them during the meme coin phrase because they were like, you know, kind of in bed with all of the cartels that were launching meme coins, and you know that's true. They can deal with that. You know, in their own conscious, but I like the protocol. so that's been kind of cool. And then obviously like Pendle's is a behemoth. You mentioned it already. They're super massive and they've done enough novel things and interesting things. I think they deserve the crown because rate swapping was totally uninteresting last cycle. They brought to the forefront with the points mania. There's a story that everyone's told over and over and over again. And now we have, you know, SUSDF on Pendle at 28% fixed rate, fixed date, which is crazy. Right, a 30% fixed rate, fixed date APR. Even if it's only 13 days, that's still 1% ROI in 2 weeks. So absolutely crazy, absolutely nuts. There's a variety of 20% fixed rate, fixed date APRs over there. It's been massive, right? Billions and billions of dollars of TVL, really kind of mind-blowing stuff. And there have been some copycats, or at least some other protocols that I think are, you know, at least significant in the space. Spectra is one of them. I like Spectra. I think the team is great. I think they have some really cool markets over there. Not as much liquidity, but you know, who can be Pendle, right? It's not easy. And then Exponent on Solana, RateX on Solana are also competitors. There was, I think, Prisma on on Cosmos.
Oh yeah, Prism on Cosmos.
Prism, there we go. But rest in peace, Cosmos. You know, it's a very very sad story. And you know, Athena. I don't think Athena was that big of a. I don't know. I don't want to talk bad about Athena because they're so humongous and obviously we're doing something that everyone wanted. But it's just a wrapped basis trade. Like it's not, or it was. Now it's a wrapped basis trade plus T-bill plus like yield of last resort plus having some bit of like insurance on that they sweep and put into a pool plus massive integrations plus they're gonna have their own chain. Like they're really building out of this. It's kind of like saying, well, you know, Hyperliquid's just a perp dex, but they're not really. And Athena's not just a wrapped basis trade. But for me, like Athena wasn't such a crazy innovation that like it blew my mind. Athena was like, you know, okay, they wrapped the basis trade and minted a stablecoin against it. That's cool. But I didn't really see all the excitement. But man, have they done really well. So that's been awesome. There's so many other protocols too that I could talk about, like Drip or anywhere that allows you to have yield-bearing margin for perps is amazing. So they have like Syrup USDC on there, 14% APR on your margin is awesome. We have like 3Jane with zero collateral loans using actual credit scores now. Terrifies me. I wouldn't use it, but it's cool. And 1,000 different vault protocols. So we have, you know, everyone and their friend trying to spin up a vault protocol. You know, YieldFi, Yo, a bunch of other ones, and we'll see how successful they are. I think, you know, also just like on-chain hedge funds on Midas Capital. Actually, I really like the on-chain hedge fund narrative. I think it's really cool that we have on-chain hedge funds because like before this administration, I don't think anyone would have even dared to do it. And people who did dare to do it kind of got beat up, and so now they're ubiquitous. I think Plume effectively has like a whole chain based off of the narrative, so that's been kind of cool. And then I think, you know, shout out to Infinify because they've effectively taken the Pendle thesis and they've wrapped it. So it's effectively like a Pendle ETF, a Pendle PT ETF, where you choose your expiry, which I think is awesome. So
I think a notable trend this cycle is that, except, I mean, you have a few protocols that gain traction that generally enabled 0 to 1 innovation within DeFi. Not necessarily because it's a completely new financial paradigm. I mean, many of them just brought over what is very common to do in traditional finance and adapted it to DeFi. I mean, especially talking about Pendle or Infinify. And I mean, all the other innovations and like the things that really gained adoption this cycle were not 0 to 1, but just like huge innovations in terms of UX and accessibility. speaking of Hyperliquid, speaking of Ethena, I mean, the basis trade has been around before. Cryptexes have been around before. And also stuff like Pump.fun. I mean, you were able to launch tokens before Pump, but it was just super annoying to do, and you had to be quite technical, and like it wasn't as accessible as it is right now. So I think that one really positive development is that we didn't have to kind of, explain and engineer our way around to create some new like Ponzi-esque whatever game. Often it just was sufficient to take something where you have a big market inefficiency and just make it more accessible, make it more available to everybody to be used, and unlock value creation through that. So I think that's overall a pretty positive development. Maybe speaking of because you mentioned the vault curators, when we were in Denver for ETH Denver half a year ago, like I saw these vault curators popping up everywhere. Suddenly everybody was a curator and like building vault infrastructure. I mean, they've been popping off left and right, usually with pretty compelling yields if you look at the underlying strategies. But
Sure.
I mean, for those who are watching who are not extremely deep in the DeFi trenches, can you give a brief overview? How do these vault protocols actually make yields, and like is it a sustainable source?
There are so many vault protocols. I will say some of them are just an index of DeFi yields. So like Yo and YieldFi, you can go on there. They're very transparent. I love that. I think that's the really cool thing about Yo and YieldFi. That you can see the entire portfolio. They're just farming. They're really just like, you're just getting exposure to farming through a stablecoin protocol, which is neat. Infinify is taking a bunch of PTs and they're depositing into them, and then they have some portion of the total portfolio that's invested in fully liquid positions. So they have a mixture of PTs and liquid positions, and then they allow you to basically wrap that and get exposure to all of those yields. And then you choose your expiry. If you have to withdraw before the other PTs expire, you just withdraw from liquid positions. And so they see ahead of time how much liquidity they need by the time you want to expire. And so it's a really nice like fractional banking kind of mechanism. So that's how that's working. Like it's really just a basket of PTs plus some fully liquid USDC yields. A lot of the other vaults, like some, I mean, I can, I haven't shared my screen yet, which is usually something that I obsessively do with everything.
Feel free to share.
Yeah. So, a lot of the other vaults, like Summerfi, this is mostly just lend aggregation. So like right now, Arbitrum is running a drip campaign, 14% APY on USDC on the Summerfi vault, which is just aggregating lend opportunities on Arbitrum, all of which are being incentivized by the drip campaign. You have Gauntlet Alpha, which, Gauntlet is the biggest curator in the space. They lend to virtually every huge person. They're great. Some people have spicy opinions about them. Don't let Mark Zeller hear that I say I like them. And 10% APR for lend aggregation, $37 million in there. It's pretty good. Euler has also taken up the mantle of lend aggregation vaults. If you go over to Earn, they have their own lend ag vault. The ETH one probably getting around 9%. I don't know. It's slow to load. The Arbitrum one probably getting around 12%. And then you have really crazy vaults. Well, yeah, 11%. So there we go. You have crazy vaults like the ones on Drip, which these have all these curators like Circuit, actually like Gauntlet, like Ace, that are running strategies. Now, I will say virtually all of them are just trying to do the hedge JLP trade. They're just like, let's all get yield from the exact same source, which is go long JLP, short the delta, and try to be the best at doing that. And some of them are done pretty well. So there are some strategies. There's a lot of basis trading. So Resolve is another one that is just was for a long time just a wrapped basis trade. My VPN's not on, so I don't know if they'll let me see. But like right now, RLP, which is their junior tranche, 10.3%, USR 6.2%, which is pretty good for a stablecoin yield. And then you can loop and leverage it. Another one, Reservoir, they have like 15% APY right now. Which is pretty crazy. They're basically doing lend aggregation plus that's mostly it, actually. They're using like Stakehouse vaults and so I can't access this. They're using Stakehouse vaults and Smokehouse vaults.
Oh, you're based in Syria, right? That's why you can't access it.
It's the darn Syrian financial laws. But so I mean, it's another good one. There are so many. though. There are literally 200 different stablecoin protocols. A lot of them are vaults. There are so many different vault products themselves. Veda is probably the number one vault provider in the space. I'm not, so shout out to them. They do a lot of strategies that are ETH denominated, a lot of strategies that are BTC denominated. We used to actually work with the Veda team back when they were 7Cs and we were Define Logic Labs, and very competent team in terms of the tech. So that's been kind of cool to see them do. A lot of what they're doing is just like farming and trying to get like private liquidity deals, which is great for the end user. Yeah, man. I mean, there's too many things. Or like if you're asking like what are the hedge funds doing, MEV Capital, Midas, they're doing a lot of the same stuff. They're leveraging PTs, they're farming LPs, they're playing some of these points campaigns. Nothing too novel yet.
Yeah, a few weeks ago, I tried to explain stablecoin farming to a bunch of traditional finance friends of mine, and it's really hard to systematize and to get across why there are such outsized returns in DeFi, especially regarding stablecoins. I mean, regarding directional stuff, it's a little easier to explain because you just have a lot of speculation and leverage premia on top of that. But I mean, for stablecoins, so like the way I approached it is to systematize the yield sources is that you kind of have a few base inputs, and then there's kind of the special ingredients of DeFi that enable us to exceed what is available on TradFi.
Well, the cool thing is we're getting more base ingredients. Like it used to be that lending was the only base ingredient, right? We had Aave, you could lend on Aave. That was like the base stablecoin yield. You could have AAUSDC, which is technically like a receipt token on Aave, getting maybe 2%. And that wasn't particularly exciting. Then big 0 to 1, we had T-bills come on chain. People were talking about it. It finally happened. The T-bill yield made it on chain. I forget who were some of the first people to do it. Maybe Ondo was one of the first, but they came on chain, and now like 4% base rate was everywhere, right? Like DAI had it, SDAI had it, then they became Sky. There were tons of protocols that then came out with like, this is our new base rate. We now have 4%. Then the basis trade hit, right? So we would lending, basis, lending, T-bill, basis. And now we had like 3 really good sources of like baseline APRs that were scalable. And now we have CDOs and CLOs coming on. And so CDOs and CLOs are making their way on chain. Now we have this additional source of yield. And now we'll see if OTC basis really becomes a new primitive, but OTC basis, which is effectively the ability to buy assets at a discount because there's not enough liquidity to sell them on the open market, and then hedge that at the same time and close those arbitrages. So I think and there are more coming, right? There are more of these coming, more base ingredients to underlie a lot of these stablecoins.
I mean, these are basically the same base ingredients that I also identified. And in terms of what is adding the cherry on top is obviously, especially if you're looking at Pendle PTs, that you have a lot of fixed yields being subsidized by people who want to get leveraged exposure to airdrop. So it's kind of,
yes.
I mean, it's actually, if you think about DeFi and the yield mechanisms from a larger scale on a higher level, it is it's a very good example of kind of this way that economics and finance is actually not always a zero-sum game, because it's like on Pendle, it's not one person gains and the other one loses. It's still that you are able, in the grand scheme of things, that there are multiple parties who profit off of this, because you kind of create value out of nothing if there's a lot of excitement about a new project with a points campaign, and you have people going long both the PT to lock in the yield accruing from the discount, and people going long the YT, and even they might be able to get surprised to the upside. So speaking of that, how sustainable would you say this whole Pendle subsidized by points farming is right now? Do you think it is somewhat correlated to the overall crypto cycle, or like what's your outlook on that front, let's say on a 6 to 12 months time horizon?
Surprisingly sustainable. And I only see this because I was on the opposite side of that opinion about halfway through the cycle, where I thought, okay, points are cool, points are neat, but they're not going to last forever. Like people are going to get tired of points. They're going to realize that it's just a way to farm tokens with a delayed gratification, right? It's virtually indistinguishable. It's just instead of having an APR and tokens that you're getting, you're not told how many you're getting, and it's kind of like fun to speculate on how much additional APR you're going to get, and then you get it all at once. People love that. People love this. This is a narrative that people are super excited about, and it's still going on. I mean, Athena's on season 5, I want to say, or season maybe season 4 ends on the 25th, and then we're on season 5. EtherFi is on season who knows what, probably pretty similar. Every new stablecoin coming out has a points season, and a lot of new ones are coming out. So like USDAI is a great example. They're doing something new. They're using renting AI compute, and $35 million of liquidity, 20% fixed rate APR, really just farming their season 1 points campaign. SUSDF only has a base rate of maybe 12%, but it's up to 28% because they just announced some new exciting stuff about their points campaign. A lot of these are like basis. A lot of these are counterparty vaults. Counterparty vaults is another one, actually, another sort of base form of yield. HLP is a good example of that. XUSD, right? Base yield of maybe 12%. It goes up all the way up to 18% because of season 1. Actually, I think that Stream may do a lot better than a lot of people anticipate in terms of their TGE. Reinsurance, another new primitive we're seeing, right? REUSDE, also because of their points. So I think people want a way to bet on the winner of the new narrative, of the next narrative. So whether it's AI compete with USDAI, whether it's like counterparty vaults, which already kind of exist, whether it's reinsurance, if there's a new hegemon in a specific narrative, they will probably do pretty well. And they want a way to get effectively a $0 cost basis exposure to that, which is farming the points, or to get a leveraged exposure to that, which is farming the YTs, or to say, hey, you know what? I'm not gonna get exposure to that. I'll just get the fixed rate. I'll just go in there. I like 18% on stablecoins. You guys go crazy about the points. I'm gonna go get the fixed rate. And so I think as long as there are new things happening and excitement over tokens coming, points will exist and points will be sustainable.
Do you see any systemic dangers for the yields in DeFi right now, or at least building up? Because especially if you consider projects like Infinify, and I was discussing that with Rob actually when I had him on the show a few weeks ago. That I mean, you can buy Infinify.
Shout out to Rob, love that guy. He's fantastic.
And Infinify is also kind of built on top of Pendle, so it's not like right now in DeFi, if you look at many of these money Lego protocols and
Matt, I never shout out Matt too.
Like it's you never fear the danger of being under collateralized or not collateralized, so you don't have a UST situation as in last cycle, but you have a lot of cross collateralization. So what I would be concerned about is that in the case we see a really large and rapid deleveraging event because like one major stablecoin depegs, like is there going to be enough liquidity for all of this to kind of unwind in a clean fashion, or are we at the risk of contagion scenarios?
Yeah, well, I mean, Athena is definitely a concentrated risk, right? It's a systemic risk insofar as it is like a dependency of so many other yields. And in like that sense, maybe Copper Block is also a dependency we have here. Binance is a dependency. Bybit is a dependency. Like anything that is participating in the yield and security of Athena are all dependencies that so much of DeFi is reliant on. And but you know, those are pretty trustworthy things. And I think this cycle we've seen a lot fewer exploits, or maybe it hasn't been fewer, but we've seen less capital exploited. I think the reason why is because people have kind of flocked towards more trusted protocols. The yields on trusted protocols have oftentimes been better than the yields on new protocols because people just don't care to farm brand new protocols incentives. And so, you know, also audits are getting way better. We have fuzzing now, which is amazing. We have, I mean, just so many new auditors. We have a lot of great teams coming out. We have formal verification, which is like a new way of auditing, which is amazing, which is really, really good. It just abstracts the logic from the smart contracts and then runs through them, formally verifying them logically to make sure they can only do what the functions are supposed to do. And yeah, so I think we're in a better place. Yes, we definitely have systemic risks. Athena is one of the systemic risks. I mean, Tether, Circle are also systemic risks, but I think we just trust them so much that we don't even consider them risks. Pendle itself, Aave, right? All of these things are systemic risks. But in terms of yield sources, that at first I thought, well, someday the basis trade is going to dry up, right? Like if we go into a bear market, the basis could even go negative. And what happens then? Does Athena just stop getting yield? And then Athena knew this, right? Because they're thinking about their own protocol more than I am. And so now they have a yield of last resort, the T-bill yield. And they may even add more yields of last resort or other sources of yields in the future. Resolve just did this. Resolve just said, hey, they did a governance vote, I think, for being able to tap also into lending aggregation on chain, which is amazing. I think that's phenomenal. I hope they do that. It's a great way to diversify your risk exposure to different yields. So, yeah, I don't know. That's like a few good examples of this was GMX on Arbitrum. Like GMX on Arbitrum was the only thing in town, and everything was built on top of it. So when GMX died, in a lot of ways, Arbitrum kind of lost relevancy. Now they're coming back. The drift campaign is giving them new life. There's some interesting things to do over there, which is fantastic. JLP kind of has this hegemony or this like big position in Solana, though of course Solana is also the meme coin trading chain, and now they're also going to have a lot of new things coming out like Solstice, which is phenomenal. So I think Solana is a lot less exposed to JLP than maybe it once was, but I would say a lot of things are exposed to JLP for sure. So yeah, there are a lot of there, or rather, I guess the other way, there are a few things that pose a lot of risk, but are also very well trusted.
Well, I think JLP and Jupiter as a whole is another one of these handful of examples of like outlier success stories in DeFi of the last year.
I should have mentioned them.
Personally,
them, especially
I've never met a single person who is trading on Jupiter, but JLP is still sitting at like a 2.1 or 2.2 billion like TVL. It's like, I mean, it's like
who trades on Jupiter? I don't know.
It's multiples bigger than HLP, and like everybody who I know is trading on Hyperliquid 24/7, and like nobody's trading on Jupiter. Like it's pretty interesting. Like I'd really be interested to know who these entities are.
I didn't say that. I don't know what that was. That was someone else.
Yeah, like I mean, looking at these systemic risks and like these kind of reflexive delevering mechanisms that would hit if we see like a coincidence of both like recession and like risk appetite going down and lower rates. So like if the Fed really cuts way too late, I think that could definitely bring us back to bear market lows of last cycle in terms of average yields being earned in DeFi. But yeah, I think it's kind of too early to make it.
Right. So like interest rates go down, equities tend to go up. Like we could see I don't know. We're calling for liquidity crunch at the same time as rate cuts. That could be a kind of a bad recipe rather than a good recipe. But interest rates go down, we tend to see equities go up. So that's time to go long and rely less on yield and more on just like price exposure. And also like CDOs are going to be relatively unmoved. They're still going to be unmoved, but there are other sources of yield that still exist that will have, and also the base, like, okay, so let's just say interest rates go down. The basis trade is typically counter to interest rates. So as interest rates goes down, the basis trade should go up. It won't always. There are some edge cases, but yeah, like if we saw an interest rate go down plus bear market, that would be a bad time.
Yeah, I mean, historically, whenever we've seen like a large recession, it was the case that the Fed was like starting to cut, and then like 2 quarters later, we see a recession to follow. So like if we see a recession in 2026, I mean, there is a decent chance that we could see like a reflexive spiral downwards. I mean, of course, the whole like macro mechanisms have changed a bit given the high percentage of like GDP being driven by government spending. So in theory, like you are more able to avert a recession now by just other fiscal policies. But yeah, let's see.
I think we have a critical mass of people who care. So no, I won't even say it. But we have yeah. Who knows? Maybe there'll be some responsible people up top that want to be fiscally responsible.
Well, I mean, right now it points like everybody is incentivized to just like
but also
pump things up.
I thought that we would never see T-bills on chain. I was very skeptical. I thought maybe in 10 years, and now it's like, of course there are T-bills on chain. And so I do think that things that didn't work last cycle, like real estate stablecoins, or like a lot of the real world assets, I just thought never. Like there's it failed before, it'll always fail. I think like I'm a lot more open to those things actually succeeding in the future. So I do think that there are other sources of yield that are less tied to recessions, less tied to interest rates, less tied to price action, that will make their way on chain and make the stablecoin landscape still interesting even in dire times.
Mm. One vertical where that could take off is maybe if you look at the USD AI thing, or AI USD, that is
Right.
like doing the
Compute.
like compute power. I think you could like stable coins and like putting that stuff on chain, I think is very good for infrastructure funding, where you obviously have difficulty raising from traditional banks, and where you can also kind of introduce a pseudo equity component maybe through points, so that you are able to kind of fit the yield requirements from people to lend to you on chain. I mean, of course, like there's a significantly higher risk profile than like traditional finance junk bonds or corporate bonds or anything. But I mean, I see a lot of potential for these kind of applications and projects to take off. Even though like I would be very careful to blindly invest in them, because like these come with much more like intricate risk profiles than just like another basis trade on-chain stablecoin where you're able to like track reserves, etc. But yeah, I mean, since we mentioned tranching quite a few times during the show, do you want to tease a little bit what you guys are building with Mezzanine Fi?
Yeah, I mean, we got plenty of time. We got 3 minutes. I usually do this pitch in 1 minute. So no, I'm kidding. Yeah, I would love to, and I can go a bit over if you can.
I mean, I got time, man.
Today I got time, cuz I don't know, people probably don't know that meme, but so Mezzanine is what I'm building a protocol. So you've probably picked up, if you don't know who I am, that I am a stablecoin aficionado, and that stablecoins are something that I'm really sort of obsessed with to an extent. And so a while back, my partner and I decided to not I have a wife, not that kind of partner, but my business partner and I decided to build a protocol. We said, hey, we've been thinking about stablecoins so much, obsessed with them for so long, talking to capital allocators, working with hedge funds, working with LPs, working with family offices on like risk and execution. And now it's time we build our own thing. And so we ideated it, we thought about it, and eventually the idea got so good in our minds that we said we have to build it. And so we started building it. We've been, we were self-funded for a long time. I can't say anything else aside from that, but we're now like in the tranches, pun intended, and we built Mezzanine. So Mezzanine is going to go live in January. It is about halfway through development now, going really well. Very excited about it. And can't wait to give a lot more updates, but let me like walk through what it is, right? So it's two things. It's one, it's an infrastructure layer for people to come and like have their own stablecoin that's getting yield. And so a few of our partners there are Tower and Union, and we're super stoked about that. That's less exciting for the DeFi user. And then for other people, it's a tranche-based stablecoin protocol. Now the reason why tranches are so important is because we see other protocols, I'm not going to name because I love them, they're good protocols, that don't have tranches, but are effectively saying, hey, we're going to do an index of stablecoin yields, and you get to have exposure to that. So let's just say you don't want to farm for yourself, you go on, you get an index of stablecoin yields. The problem with that is that if any one of those stablecoin yields has anything bad happen to it, now you have a DPEG. Right now you have like a less than $1 value on your initial deposit. That is a horrendous scenario, because users want to go in and they want to see number go up and to the right, and they want to do that conservatively. Like you're not investing in stablecoins because you think you're going to become a millionaire from like a $10,000 deposit, right? You're investing in stablecoins because you want, I hate the word passive income, can't stand it, but you want to be able to go in and like have an expected APR increase. You want to be able to withdraw more than you deposited into, and you want to be able to do that expectedly. So that's where tranching really makes a massive difference, because DeFi has inherent risk. And if you don't tranche, then any of those risks you're exposed to can blow up your principal, or at least like severely depeg your principal, even if you are diversified. So even if you're in one of these massive yield indexes on chain, if any one of the things you're exposed to blows up, now you've taken an NAV hit. We want to allow users to not have that happen to them. So we went with the tranching mechanism, and we got real spicy with it. So the way that it works is there's a senior tranche, SMD-USD, targeting 6 to 9% APR. So really conservative, instantly redeemable back in USDC. But here's the fun part. 40% of the protocol TVL acts as a first loss layer before the senior tranche, meaning that if we have an index of yields, you'd have to see 40% of the TVL exploited. So like 40% of all of the strategies we're in exploited before you ever see a loss on that senior tranche. Whereas for a typical stablecoin, even the very first BIP that's exploited has now affected the NAV. So senior tranche is very, very protected. Tranche, very, very protected, 69% APR. And in our opinion, a lot more conservative than even things like well, I'm not going to compare, but even things that are in the same yield range that are fully exposed to their underlying strategies. Then we have the mezzanine tranche, the tranche that is sort of what the protocol is named after. This is targeting a 12 to 20% APR, way more aggressive, but it's a mezzanine tranche, right? So it is the tranche that protects the senior tranche, but it's also protected by the junior tranche. So it's right in the middle. So it's targeting a yield similar to RLP, right? 12 to 20%. And it's not a junior. It does not have junior tranche exposure. So any losses do not affect the mezzanine tranche until the junior tranche is fully blown up, fully gone. Now, we didn't want users to be exposed to potential junior tranche losses, but we wanted users to be able to get exposure to junior tranche yield. And so the way that we did that is through a bonding mechanism that is kind of like Ohm, if you guys remember Ohm from last cycle. Not in that there's going to be 6,000% APY, not that it's like a huge Ponzi scheme. I mean, Ohm is not a Ponzi scheme anymore. I actually like the Olympus team now. I think what they're doing is actually really cool. But the way it works is users who want junior tranche yield, but not junior tranche exposure, they can come in, they can buy our token from us, the Mez token, at a discount. So that's where the bonding mechanism comes in. You come with 100K, you buy 102K of Mez over a bonding period, 14 days, 28 days, 56 days. You get it at a discount, right? But the moment you buy it is also staked. And all of that staking yield that you're getting is from the junior tranche. So junior tranche gets 20 to 30% of the total yield that's being generated, despite the junior tranche only being 10% of the TVL. And in that way, it's getting a massively large exposure to the net yield. But all of that junior tranche yield is not like, it's not just directly going to, you're not getting a USDC yield, you're not getting like an MZUSD yield. All of that yield is going towards buying back the Mez asset or governance asset off of the open market and then redistributing it to Mez stakers as a completely non-inflationary yield, meaning no new tokens are being emitted to give a really, really attractive APR on that. So Mez is the way you get junior tranche yield with zero junior tranche exposure. If the junior tranche does take a loss, Mez is completely unaffected. You're getting the junior tranche yield, not the junior tranche exposure. So that's pretty cool. I mean, I can walk through sort of like how it's going to work for users. It's going to be very simple. They come in with USDC, they mint MZUSD, our non-yield bearing stablecoin, and they can shove it into the senior tranche or mezzanine tranche. And then composability is a lot of fun. Go take on Euler, Morpho, Pendle. We're going to have a Pendle day one integration, which is awesome. I love the Pendle team. And also we're working with Gauntlet as our curator. So shout out to Gauntlet. Really excited about being able to tap into their liquidity and expertise as well. And where are the yields coming from? Well, we're a USDC in, USDC out protocol, which means we're going to be holding a lot of USDC because you can redeem MZUSD 1-to-1 for USDC at any time. So 5% of reserves are used for those redemptions. If the reserves fall below 5%, it comes out of the other 25% liquid positions. These are what we call USDC in, USDC out positions. Basically, lend ag is a big one of these. So anywhere where you can deposit USDC, it grows. You can withdraw USDC at any time. No fee to enter, no fee to exit except for gas to refill and service those reserves. And then up to 70% are a little bit more expressive positions. So PTs, LPs, and even some private liquidity deals that are not reliant upon some future TG and large vesting terms. This will push us over the edge in terms of yield, make us highly competitive. And then even if those PTs, we need to utilize those values for liquid positions and for reserves, we can borrow against them utilizing our curator Gauntlet for some deep liquidity to service those reserves in the interim. Now, because we're taking on some duration exposure with PTs, the MLT asset, that mezzanine liquidity tranche asset, does have a 21-day on staking period, which sort of mitigates any effects there. Of course, you can sell MLT on the open market. If it depegs, fantastic. Arbitrageurs can come up, unstake it for the NAV and have a good time there. But yeah, so we're super excited about this. I can't show any more slides. This is a pitch deck and there's some private information on there. So that's what's going on. And we're like super excited about this. We think it's really going to be a bit of a game changer, especially with the stuff we're doing on the infrastructure layer where, teams, blockchains, protocols will be able to have their own white labeled stablecoin. So you could have like Max USD And it's just a distribution layer. So all the dollars you bring into Max USD, you get to keep the senior tranche yield for that 69% APR. And then you can use that APR to incentivize people to come onto your chain, people to come onto your protocol without having to spend any of your own Max tokens. So that's been a cool vertical. We've seen this sort of narrative play out with Sonic and Rings protocol. We've seen it play out with Katana a lot. We're seeing it play out with Plasma to some extent. A few other chains are actually introducing the same mechanism. Gnosis chain kind of has this with XDAI. And so that's mezzanine in a nutshell. You got any questions?
So if I understood it correctly, you're basically acting as one of these vault curators or like on-chain hedge funds, but you're introducing a tranche layer on top of that. So you're able to service various yield profiles and like risk profiles, or like, I mean, just to the point I'm trying to make is that out of the like yield sources, you are still the one who's allocating the capital, right?
Well, kind of. So there's three teams. There's the protocol team, then there's the risk management team, which are effectively operating the strategies through a custodial solution like August, which is phenomenal. So it's all smart contracts based. And then there is a risk analysis team, which is effectively saying what can and can't happen. So you can think of this like a Gauntlet or a Chaos Labs. Basically, their only job is to assess the risk of strategies. So the risk management team will propose strategies that they want to do to the risk analysis team. The risk analysis team could say, no, like too risky, can't do it. It's just unfeasible. The risk profile is outside of the bounds of what the protocol wants to accept. Or they can say yes, and then they will look at what the liquidity can actually absorb, and then they will make a proposal to governance. So then users who are holding MZUSD or the senior tranche or the mezzanine tranche will vote yes or no. And if it's voted yes, then the risk management team can operate within the confines of what governance has set. So it's not like I'm just going in there and, Wild Westing whatever I want to throw money at. It's a multi-layered, like very checks and balanced system to return to the end user like the best publicly or privately available yield that is highly risk adjusted.
So it's not like, for example, stream finance, where the fund manager has sole discretion about the capital allocation, that like you're
right, where 0x Law is just running an on-chain hedge fund. No, it's not quite like that. But I think what he's doing is also fantastic, and there's a huge PMF for it. And I think he's probably going to move in the direction of a little bit more decentralization in the future. But no, it is not quite like that.
So like, how can people start getting exposure? Like, what's the path to launching? Yeah.
Like I said, we're going to be launching in January. Man, I don't know what I'm legally allowed to say, what I'm not legally allowed to say. So go follow Mezzanine, I would say. Maybe go follow. I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to say anything else. Follow me, right? Follow my own X account, and we'll probably be talking about it a little bit in the DeFi Dojo Discord. But that's like a sacred place to me in some sense, where I try not to bring any outside work inside. But I do think it'll be really cool. Opportunity for even people in there. So, and that's it. I sucked in some spit, man. Now I'm coughing. So just go follow me and Mezzanine, and you'll learn more as it comes out.
Are you able to talk about any details of the Mez tokens, like to dive a little deeper into the functionality of that and tokenomics?
Yeah.
Like, is there going to be an Ethena-like points program where you're able to farm it in the early innings, or like how are you trying to make the token model sustainable?
So we have kind of spun things on its head, in that we did not want to create an altcoin that we wouldn't buy. So that was a big driving force behind how we designed the protocol, which is we wanted an altcoin that we would invest in ourselves. And so how do we do that? Well, we're launching with the token, which I know is crazy and is probably going to be mind blowing. So it's kind of like you're entering into an Athena season 2 or like a EtherFi season 2, where the token will already be live, but very, very, very low float, because the only way to get it will be through the bonding mechanism. So buying at a discount, filling up that junior tranche, filling up that insurance layer for the protocol, and then getting the staking yield that way. And only up to around 5% of the total tokens will be going out that first year, and it's gonna be dripped out slowly. So it's roughly 10 bips available for bonding weekly, and so that's the way to get exposure to it. There will be a points campaign, a pretty conservative one, for like MZUSD and the senior tranche, to give them additional boost and really incentivize MZUSD usage, similar to how Infinify has incentivized IUSD usage. And the token, like I said, it's slow dripped. The only real way to get it initially is through bonding. There will be also liquidity to purchase it. But if you can get it on a discount, why not do that? And the staking yield again comes from that junior tranche yield. So this actually is a pretty good illustration where you can see sort of what happens at $1 billion of TVL and a 10% net APR. It's $100 million of annualized yield. Well, the yield flows down the stack. At first, make sure the senior tranche hits its yield obligation. So at 40% protocol TVL, 7% APR, it's a $28 million annualized yield obligation. We have $72 million remaining flowing down the stack. That then goes to the mezzanine tranche. This is capped at 30% protocol TVL, 15% APR. It's a $45 million annualized yield obligation. We have $27 million remaining of yield. It's a lot. It's 27% of the total yield left after hitting these yield obligations. So what we do with that is instead of giving it to like a junior tranche receipt token and giving users junior tranche exposure, we use that $27 million to buy Mez off of the open market and redistribute that back to Mez stakers as a non-inflationary staking yield. So they're benefiting from the TWAP buy pressure. They're benefiting from a non-inflationary staking yield. They're benefiting from TVL growth because as TVL is effectively like long on TVL, because as TVL goes up, that means more yield from more buybacks and more yield distribution relative to a pretty fixed distribution mechanism through the bonding. So that's like the tokenomics in a nutshell. If you have any other questions, happy to try to answer.
Are you having any plans yet how to address kind of the whole, because it's inevitably going to be a low float, high FTV token in that sense, because you want to be conservative with the issuance. And like from my experience, whenever you see people look at other projects where that is the case, I think FX protocol is another example of that, where you have a reasonably low float but a high FTV. I mean, as soon as people see that, it scares a lot of people away from holding or purchasing that token, because nobody actually undertakes the effort of understanding the underlying token emission schedule. So like, how are you planning to address that potential source of criticism?
Well, we're hoping to launch at a very like conservative value that will scale with the protocol's TVL, because there's a direct relationship between the yield produced by the protocol and the actual value of Mez. And so it's going to be our job to then scale the TVL to give more intrinsic value to Mez. And so that's kind of what we're hyper focused on. And we have a lot of partnerships. I don't know if I can say what they are. That should be bringing significant TVL into us in the first few whiles, and then scaling those partnerships to bring in even more TVL, especially into the senior tranche, because every dollar in the senior tranche benefits the entire protocol because it takes less yield than it produces. And so that's going to be our job. Our job is to scale TVL, scale the senior tranche, and then the users will benefit from that TVL growth. So our intent is to make sure that the issuance of Mez is effectively in line with the rate at which TVL grows.
So in terms of revenue, since you mentioned that a lot of revenue is, or protocol fees generated is going to be used to buy back the Mez token, if I understood it correctly. Like,
well,
what is the...
Unlike rev share, so a lot of protocols that do rev share, which is kind of mimetic, they take protocol revenue, which comes from fees typically, or like a small performance fee, and then they take a portion of that and they use it for buybacks and burns, or buybacks, or just pure redistribution. For us, it's literally the entire junior tranche yield. So 20 to 30% of all of the yield being generated by the protocol is going back towards Mez stakers. So it's not just like a small little itsy bitsy bit of revenue that like we're using to like drum up a narrative. It's genuinely the case that Mez stakers are getting the junior tranche yield through two mechanisms. One is through the buybacks and TWAP buybacks, and then two is literally through all of those repurchased Mez being given back to Mez stakers to grow their share of governance and to also give them a non-inflationary APR.
So how do you make money in all of this? Like, are you just like staking your own portion of Mez tokens, or like what's the expected way how mezzanine will sustain itself over time?
Yeah, so the team does have will have tokens, right, with long vesting terms, so not going to be able to realize any of that for years to come. But in addition to that, the platform may have a small fee turned on eventually for whatever it may be, like a protocol fee. We're not going to do deposit fees. We're not going to do withdrawal fees. I can't stand those. We will never have them. And then the curators or the risk management team will have a performance fee on the actual yield being generated. And so there are a number of ways that revenue is being generated for the teams involved. And for us, it's going to be, that platform fee when it does get turned on. That's going to be going to like the foundation of the labs.
Yeah, I think it is such an overlooked variable, especially like been in the last years of especially stablecoin farming, that like how much money gets lost to slippage, exit fees, entry fees, etc. And like I think especially over the last month, like looking at the discourse witnessed in the dojo, there has been like very explicit attention on being able to entry exit with USDC, USDT by on a one-to-one basis, and like more attention being paid to the kind of operating costs of stablecoin farming. So I think that's a very, very good step in the right direction to avoid any type of these fees.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I could talk so much about the way in which we're avoiding like runway creep, which we've seen in a few other stablecoin protocols like effectively just stop operating to some extent because they can't afford to continue paying their workers because they didn't have revenue early enough. And so we know sort of what our TVL number is before we are cash flow positive. I'm not going to, I don't want to jinx anything and say, but we're very excited and confident that we'll be cash flow positive super early in our lifespan. And we're also not like doing a lot of team bloat. So a lot of teams we've seen that have failed have hired everyone they could possibly think of because they got so much money from raising, and we're like, oh, I can't wait to spend it.
DYDX Foundation Core.
Exactly right. Yeah, and then just having way too many team members, and inevitably that leads to firing. And firing is never, I don't know. It's usually not good for the protocol. So we're learning a lot from the people that we've worked with. We're learning a lot from the other teams that are out there, a lot of the teams that we're working with, getting a lot of good and sage wisdom from them and advice. And the cool thing is we're not like having to go out and buy advisors. We just know so many teams that we're able to just talk to them, candidly and see what worked, what didn't work, what would you have done differently, and really like this is the culmination of all of the best things, subtracting all of the worst things, and trying to put it all into a protocol.
Because you mentioned that you're going to offer white label solutions, so can you expand a little more what that means? So are other protocols able to just use Mezzanine's mechanism to apply kind of in an isolated fashion for their own DApp? Let's say someone that solely wants to build on top of Pendle or solely wants to build on top of lending markets like Morpho, Euler, etc. Like, are they going to is this going to be a model that it will be available for like whitelisted curators to use, or how are you envisioning that to go forward?
Well, not exactly. So what we've found so far talking to these white labeling partners is that they just want senior tranche exposure. So they want the senior tranche yield, but they want their own token. And they want their own token for a number of reasons, because they have the distribution, but they don't want to reinvent the wheel. They don't want to create a new stablecoin. They don't want to try to build a massive like insurance fund for that stablecoin. They love the instant redeemability back in USDC. And so what we're doing is we're allowing someone to come on and effectively get senior tranche exposure, 69% APR, with 40% of the total protocol TVL acting as effectively as an insurance layer for that senior tranche, instant redeemability back in USDC, and then they capture all of the yield of whatever whatever distribution they've been able to acquire. So we have some teams that are anticipating. I mean, I don't even say the numbers because it's so wild. Substantial TVL. The TVL they bring in, they capture all of the yield. They didn't build any of the tech or infrastructure. We did that all for them. We benefit because it's senior tranche. So all senior tranche TVL is beneficial for us because we produce more yield than they take. And then they can do whatever they want with that yield. And so, you could imagine a new blockchain, like I said, a Max blockchain, right? Now you have your own blockchain. You want every dollar on Max blockchain to be producing yield for the chain, but not being taken by the users holding like Max USD. So you use our solution. You don't have that. So you don't have a DEX, you have a money market. You can take all of the yield you've generated on all of the dollars on your chain and use it to incentivize deep DEX liquidity, use it to incentivize deep money market liquidity, and you can have it redeemable back in USDC. So, and the cool thing is you have a 40% protocol TVL acting as a risk buffer or loss buffer for your stablecoin, making it in some senses a lot more risk adjusted than alternatives.
Sounds pretty exciting. Like, yeah, I definitely think that if mezzanine gains tractions, and I mean everybody is indicating that it will get. I mean, given your connections in the space, that like you can be one of the core players in DeFi in terms of mechanisms being utilized, and just kind of broadening the attractiveness of DeFi for various risk profiles, especially if you look at people or like small institutions in the traditional finance and family office space. I think that if you're able to kind of offer more principal protected and like lower risk yields, I think that could fuel a lot of the base yield inputs in DeFi going forward. So yeah, very excited for what is to come on that front. Having exceeded the hour already, is there any other topics you'd like to cover, or like any other DeFi things, or just anything else you'd like to discuss?
Yeah, let's do a deep dive into who killed JFK. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, that's a good one.
So
I wrote like one of my high school history papers about that. So
that's wild. No, I mean I could really wax lyrical about all the new protocols coming out, all the new interesting things coming out in DeFi. But without going out another hour, I will say two things that are coming out that you probably should look out for. Solstice is launching in a couple of weeks. That's going to be the Athena of Solana. Fully self-funded, which is amazing. So no VCs. They have over $100 million already before they even go live, which is nuts. I think they're going to be pretty heavily supported by Solana as well. So that should be pretty big. Go check that out. Neutral. They're kind of like a new primitive, right? They're going to be another stablecoin protocol that's doing the OTC basis trade, which is I think the first protocol to really lean into that narrative. I think Falcon's also doing that, but so Neutral should be pretty cool. Go check them out. They're going to launch around the same time, end of September. Boros is out and live, so if you want to go trade basis, that's a lot of fun. I think that's cool. A lot of the Pendle PTs are up for expiration, which means there's going to be a lot of transitions and liquidity. So if you want to go bet on some PTs, assuming they're going to get maybe compressed by all the TVL moving and migrating, I think right now would be a good time to go buy some PTs for sure, assuming the migrations are going to push those IOIs down at least temporarily. I mean, there are so many things. Go join the DeFi Dojo Discord. Follow me on X for more yield information. I'm probably going to do an ETH yield thread coming up soon because there's so many good ETH opportunities. And we'll end it there.
Very nice. I'll make sure to provide all the links to the dojo in the podcast and the stream description below once we have the polished version live. And being a long-term member of a dojo myself, I can definitely recommend joining and hanging out there. I think it's one of the most pristine places to be around just everyday DeFi involved capital and thinkers, and gives you a lot of access to new perspectives. Thanks a lot for hopping on, Stephen, and very excited what is to come with Mezzanine Fi, how the dojo is going to be forward, and any last words to the audience?
Thank you for watching, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Have a good one, everybody, and see you the next couple of days.